Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Rosh Hashana Daf Chaf Aleph is a relatively short daf discussing the establishment of the new month and how it affects Yom Tov in the month that follows. The Gemara brings a number of stories, incidents that happened as far as whether Yom Kippur could be assumed to be on one day, or do we have to be afraid that there are 2 days Yom Kippur because we don't know which day Rosh Chodesh Tishrei was. Then we'll have two Mishnayos, which will discuss the topic of when we could be Mechalel Shabbos to travel to Yerushalayim to testify that we saw the new moon and establish the new month. The Gemara will give the source of these halachos and discuss a story mentioned in the Mishnah. So first, let's begin the daf, and it's talking about the establishment of Yom Kippur. So Levi went up to Bavel, the Gemara says, and he arrived in the 11th of the month of Tishrei, which should be the day after Yom Kippur. And he said to the people there, I see you're eating good, delicious food here in Bavel on Yom Kippur, on the great day. That was how Yom Kippur was referred to. So they said to him, look, you're obviously trying to tell us that today is Yom Kippur. We thought that yesterday was Yom Kippur because we assumed that the month of El had only 29 days. You're telling us that when you were in Eretz Yisrael during the month of El, they made it 30 days, and therefore Yom Kippur is on what we consider to be the 11th of Tishrei. So if you're aware of this, so testify, say Eidos, say Bezdin was Makadesh the Chodesh on the 31st, and therefore Yom Kippur is a day later, we'll accept it from you. So he said, I cannot testify, because we'll see later, the halacha is that you are not allowed to testify as to when Rosh Chodesh, Tishrei, or Nisan were, unless you heard Beis Din say Mekudesh. Chazal made a takana in order to prevent mistakes, that for the month of Tishrei and the month of Nisan, which have Yom Tovim dependent on that Rosh Chodesh, anybody who's going to travel and say and announce that today is Rosh Chodesh, or how long the month of El or Adar actually was, has to have heard Beis Din say Mekudesh. You cannot do it based on hearsay. So he said, listen, I didn't hear them say it directly. I am telling you from my experience what happened, but I cannot testify officially because I did not hear them say it explicitly. Okay, now the Gemara says, halacha Rav Yochanan says is that as follows. Messengers used to go out from Yerushalayim to announce what day Rosh Chodesh was 6 months of the year. 2 of them were Nisan and Tishrei. Those were the important ones. In the month of Tishrei, they did not get as far as they got in the month of Nisan, because in the month of Tishrei, they couldn't travel on Rosh Hashanah, and they couldn't travel on Yom Kippur. So they had less travel days, and therefore they wouldn't get as far. Says Rav Yochanan, any place that they couldn't reach in Tishrei has to keep 2 days Yom Tov, even in Nisan, even if they knew when Pesach was. Even if the messengers arrived in Nisan before Pesach, but if they didn't arrive in Tishrei before Sukkot, you gotta keep 2 days anyway. Gzeira, we should not get confused and end up keeping only 1 day of Sukkot, just like they kept only 1 day of Pesach. So Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan said this halacha, but his Talmidim, Rabbi Evi bar Nagri and Rabbi Chia bar Abba, didn't seem to keep this halacha. They went to a place where the messengers in the month of Nisan were able to reach and announce the proper time of Rosh Chodesh, but they could not arrive in the month of Tishrei. And they did not say that they have to keep 2 days. They only kept 1 day halacha. They only kept 1 day of Yom Tov there, because it was Nisan and they knew when Rosh Chodesh had been. So Rav Yochanan was upset about them, and he said, did I not tell you, my Talmidim, did I not tell you that you're not supposed to do that Gzeira Tishrei to Nisan? Now the Gemara discusses Yom Kippur specifically. The Gemara says that Rava, who lived in Bavel, used to keep 2 days Yom Kippur. He fasted 2 full days because he didn't know which day Yom Kippur was. And the Gemara says one day it happened that he was right. Elul was the 30-day month that year, and the day of Yom Kippur was the 2nd day that he kept out of Churma. And the Gemara says that Rav Nachman once fasted the entire Yom Kippur, and just as Yom Kippur was ending, a messenger came and he said, this year was 30 days Elul and tomorrow is Yom Kippur. So he was a bit upset. He said to him, where are you from? He said, I'm from a town called Damharya. He said, Damharya, that's a contraction of Dam Teacharisa. There'll be blood in the end, because you're making me fast 2 full days without giving me a chance to eat anything in between. And he referred to him with the pasuk in Eicha, Kalam B'Hayurad Feiner. Our pursuers were light-footed. Had he been a little slower, I could have got a chance to eat something before he told me that it's Yom Kippur today, and I would have been perfectly mutter, because I was not aware of that. What they did with calendar, but instead he came right now, and now I have to fast 48 hours, and that's a difficult thing and perhaps a dangerous thing to do. Okay, now the Gemara quotes a halacha of Rav Huna bar Avin to Rava. He said that you have to make an extra Adar some years. When do you make an extra Adar? If the Tkufas Teves, that is the winter season, is extending into the month of Nisan, such that the vernal equinox, the beginning of spring, will end up being the 16th of Nisan or on, then you have to extend an extra Adar to make sure that that equinox doesn't happen from the 16th of Nisan or later. It's got to be before the 16th of Nisan. What's the reason? The Torah says, Shmar es Chodesh Aviv, which we understand to mean make sure that you keep the spring. Aviv means when the crops begin to bloom. Make sure that you keep the spring, the blooming of the crops, make sure that that only happens in the month of Nisan and not any other time. And not only in the month of Nisan, but in the first 2 weeks of the month of Nisan, when the sun is Chodesh, when the moon is Chadash, when the moon is growing, the moon is increasing. That's what it has to be. That's the first 14 days. Now, if the equinox comes out on the 15th day, you can adjust it without having to add an extra month by just adding an extra day in the month of Adar. However, if it's on the 16th day, then you have to add an extra month. There's no other way around that. Okay, one more thing here. The Gemara says that Rav Nachman said to those who sail on the oceans, he said, you don't know when the Rosh Chodesh was announced. You're not going to get the message because you're out here at sea. So how are you going to know when to make Pesach? So here's what you should do. You should destroy your chametz when the moon sets just as the sun rises. Now the moon rises and sets 12 hours of being up and 12 hours of being down. During the springtime, the sun also has 12 hours of up and 12 hours of being set. And the way the moon works is that it rises 50 minutes later every day until it completes a complete cycle in 1 month. On the full moon, on the 15th of the month, of the lunar month, of the Jewish calendar month, it rises at sunset and it sets at sunrise. Exactly. On Rosh Chodesh, it rises at sunrise and it sets at sunset. So he said, when you see that the moon sets exactly as the sun rises, you know it's the 15th of the month, destroy your chametz. So Gemara says, what do you mean? You have to destroy your chametz on the 14th of the month. That's where the moon rises and sets slightly before. It rises slightly before sunset and it sets slightly before sunrise. It's off by a little bit. Gemara says, no, it only sets slightly before sunrise on the 14th if you're on land, because mountains and the shape of the earth, the contours of the land, blocks the moon from sight. If you're at sea, where you can see a clear shot all the way to the horizon, there the moon actually sets already on the 14th. It actually stays up all the way until sunrise. It doesn't set a few minutes before sunrise. Okay, now we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses, as we've seen earlier, we've seen this Mishnah quoted, when the witnesses were allowed to be Machal Shabbos to come to testify that they'd seen the new moon. As we shall recall, a month could either be 29 days and the 30th day is day 1, that's Rosh Chodesh of the next month, or it could be 30 days and the 31st day is day 1. Now we needed to have the Beis Din declare Rosh Chodesh on day 30, and they would do that if witnesses came and said that they saw the new moon, that the moon was born, then they know that today must be the beginning of the new month. So if day 30 was on Shabbos, the only time you could see the moon would be Friday night. So witnesses would have to come, even on Shabbos, they have to travel outside the Tchum. Says the Mishnah as follows: in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, they were allowed to travel on Shabbos any month, because we want to make sure that we know which day is Rosh Chodesh, so we bring the Korban Musaf of Rosh Chodesh in the right time. Once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, we don't have that anymore. So the Mishnah says there were only 2 months in which they were allowed to be Machal Shabbos, and that was for Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, in order to make sure that we get the messengers out quickly so that people can know when Yom Tif is going to be. The Gemara quotes a Brisa that says this was actually Takana of Yochanan ben Zakkai, who said, look, there's no more Kabbanas anymore, we don't need to have messengers going out every month, and therefore we only allowed to be Machal Shabbos for Nisan and for Tishrei. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? You telling me there's only 2 months that the messengers went out? The Gemara says it's not correct. We know, we've seen earlier in the Masechta, messengers went out 6 months. 6 months of the year, messengers went out. Every time there's something in that month, even Chanukah, Purim, or a fast day, the messengers went out. Why only Tishrei and Nisan? Somewhere says, no, you have to adjust the Mishnah to say the following thing. In Tishrei and Nisan, the messengers were not allowed to leave on the evening of Shabbos. They couldn't leave Motzei Shabbos. They had to wait till Sunday morning. Therefore, we wanted to make sure that those witnesses came on Shabbos, because if they only came Motzei Shabbos, we would have to wait till Sunday morning. If they came on Shabbos, they could leave earlier, but otherwise they'd have to wait till Sunday morning, and we would lose time for those messengers to travel. What's the reason behind this? So Rashi gives a complex explanation. Rashi says that when the moon is seen on the 30th, it's not necessarily our Bezdin going to say that that day is Rosh Chodesh and that day is day 1, and the ending month was only 29 days. They could possibly decide to extend the month anyway, as we've seen in the Gemara earlier. Therefore, we could not allow the shluchim, we could not allow the messengers to leave right away when the moon was announced. We have to wait until Bezdin says Mekudesh, because Bezdin still may not say Mekudesh. Now, if the moon is not seen on the 30th, so then the 31st is Rosh Chodesh, so technically they should be allowed to leave as soon as day 30 is over, and it's not been declared Rosh Chodesh, the messenger should be allowed to depart right away, even before Bezdin says Mekudesh. But Chazal made a takana that even when it's a full month, it's a 30-day month, and day 31 is going to be Rosh Chodesh of the next month, they still can't leave until Mekudesh is said for the months of Tishrei and Nisan. So the months of Tishrei and Nisan, even if it's a full month, and day 31 is for sure Rosh Chodesh, there's no variables there, because we want to make sure that we don't make any mistakes. And we don't make mistakes when it's a 29-day month and leave before, because we'll assume it's 29 days. And really it ends up being a 30-day month because the Bezdin had to adjust it despite the moon appearing. Therefore, the rule is, Nisan and Tishrei, the messengers cannot leave until they hear Bezdin say Mekudesh. They can testify they heard Bezdin say Mekudesh, as we saw earlier in the Gemara on the first part of the daf here. Now, any other month, as soon as day 30 is over, they could leave in the evening. They could set out, even without hearing Bezdin say Mekudesh, because there's no problem. We don't have to worry about Bezdin saying Mekudesh. We know as soon as day 30 is over, either they were Mekadesh day 30, or it's going to be day 31. Whatever has happened, it's already happened. If the Eidim already came, we already know that it's Mekudesh, and if the Eidim didn't come, we know that day 31 is going to be the correct day. So, now, if day 30 is Shabbos, so any month of the year, we don't need any month besides for Tishrei and Nisan. Those witnesses can set out Motzei Shabbos. Day 30 again is Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, as soon as it's over, the witnesses can go, and they'll know, even if the witnesses didn't come on Shabbos. They came Motzei Shabbos, fine, we'll hear them, they'll come, we'll know exactly what the story is now. However, Nisan and Tishrei, if the witnesses don't come Shabbos, and we're not Mekadesh the Chodesh on Shabbos, and we're waiting for the witnesses to come, we're waiting for the Bezdin to say Mekudesh the next day, Bezdin won't say Mekudesh until Sunday morning, until the Bezdin convenes and they meet and they say no witnesses came. We gotta say Mekudesh now, and the messengers won't be able to leave Motzei Shabbos. They have to wait till Sunday morning because they have to wait to hear Mekudesh. Therefore, we said those witnesses had better come on Shabbos and better be Machal Shabbos. That way, if they come, we know that they came, and Bezdin already said Mekudesh, and the witnesses can leave. And if they didn't come, we know they're not coming, because they could have come on Shabbos. The fact that they didn't come means they're not coming, and the Bezdin could go ahead and be Mekadesh the Chodesh, and the witnesses can leave as soon as they possibly can right away at Motzei Shabbos. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, what is the source of the halacha that had to be Machal Shabbos in order to make sure that Yom Tov comes out on the right day? Gemara quotes a pasuk, Elu meyadei Hashem asher tikru oisam b'may Adam. You have to make sure that meyadei Hashem end up b'may Adam, and you can be Machal Shabbos to do it correctly. It has to be happen at the correct time itself. Now, as we noted, the witnesses can't leave until Motzei Shabbos. They can't leave on Shabbos. Why can't the witnesses be Machal Shabbos to go? So that's learned out of this pasuk. Also, it says Asher Tikru Uosim. It's only the declaring of the time, which is the declaring of Rosh Chodesh, and everything that leads up to the declaration, meaning the witnesses are traveling. That's Machal Shabbos. That you could push off Shabbos for. However, to go keep it, to go tell people when it is that you can't do, that you're not allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. Okay, now we get to our next Mishnah. Mishnah discusses when are you precisely allowed to be Mechal Shabbos? Are there limitations in witnesses being Mechal Shabbos to come tell the Beis Din that they saw the moon? So Gemara says that if the moon was not clearly seen, it was hard to see in the sky, then you certainly can be Mechal Shabbos because it's likely you're the only person who saw it. What happens when it was very clear, and you could assume almost everybody saw it, the Beis Din Yerushalayim probably saw it, should you go be Mechal Shabbos anyway? So the Gemara says it's a machlokes. Tanakama says yes, even if it's clearly seen, go be. We don't want to leave this open to was it clear, maybe you're the other one who saw it anyway, go anyway. He basically said no, if it's clearly seen, you could assume the Beis Din Yerushalayim will see it, you don't have to go travel. Now the Mishnah quotes an incident that says that there was a time where 40 pairs of Eidim, 40 pairs of witnesses all saw the moon, and they went traveling towards Yerushalayim, being Mechal Shabbos, going outside the Tchum. When they passed through Lud, Rabbi Akiva stopped them. He said, you don't need to go. If there's 40 of you who saw it, you only need one who has to go. Everybody else go home. No need to be Mechal Shabbos. Rabbi Gamliel sent a message to Rabbi Akiva. That's a problem. The problem is the next time they're going to say, why do I need to go see the moon? Somebody else probably saw it and already testified to the Beis Din. They'll go, and then it's going to be a problem because because it could be that they're the only ones who saw it, and we will not get that testimony. So you're messing things up. Now the Gemara at the end quotes a brisa that says that Rabbi Yehuda says it was not Rabbi Akiva who stopped them, because Rabbi Akiva would have certainly understood what Rabbi Gamliel said. It was somebody else named Shezefer, who was the head of Kader. He stopped them. He was a layman, and he stopped them. And Rabbi Gamliel sent his message to remove him from his position because he did things that he did not have the authority to do, and it was not correct. Alright, the Gemara here wants to know the word alil is what's used to describe clearly. The word alil, it's a seen ba'alil. The Gemara says, what does the word alil mean? Where do you see that the word alil means clear? So the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Tehillim, Imrais Hashem, Imrais Taharis, the words of Hashem are pure, Kesef Tzaref ba'alil, La'aretz, like purified silver, ba'alil, la'aretz, like clear to the earth, Mezokak Shivasayim, purified 70 times, or Shivasayim is plural, sevens. So there you see that the word Ba'alil means clear. Now the Gemara has a drasha, unrelated, but on this pasuk itself, with the machlokes. The Gemara says that it's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel about the gates of wisdom. Moshe had 49 of the 50 gates of wisdom. How do you know that? Because it says Shivasayim. Shivasayim, the Gemara interprets to be 7 times 7, which is 49. So Moshe had 49 gates of wisdom, but they're really 50, and he was missing one. How do you know there was missing one? Because the pasuk also says, "V'atechasreyu ma'at me'alekim." He had slightly these psukim are describing Moshe Rabbeinu. It says that he was slightly less than Elikim, slightly less than the highest level of wisdom, of knowledge, and therefore there are 50, and he had 49 of them. Now the machlokes in Rav and Shmuel is, did Koheles, who refers to Shlomo Melech, did he have that level of wisdom as well? And it's based on a pasuk in Koheles that says, Bakosh Koheles limtzo, or Bikesh Koheles limtzo divrei chayfetz. Koheles wanted to find the words of delight, meaning he wanted to get this great wisdom. But a baskal, a voice came out of Shemayim and told him the end of the pasuk that said, Yosher divrei emes, the Torah has said something which blocks you from being able to achieve this divrei chayfetz that you want. There's something that you want to do that the Torah says you can't. So what is that? So according to the one opinion, Rav Shmuel, Gemara doesn't say which, he wanted to get the 49 levels of wisdom that Moshe had, and the Torah said you can't, because it says, Lo kam navi od b'Yisrael ki Moshe, there's not going to be anybody like Moshe, and therefore you cannot get all 49 levels that he got. The other one said, no, he could. That fact that the pasuk says there's no navi like Moshe does not block Shlomo. Shlomo was not what we would call a navi. Shlomo may have had prophecy, but Shlomo was a king. He was a melech. And therefore there may not have been a navi like Moshe, but there was a king like Moshe with the wisdom of Moshe, and therefore he did achieve all 49 levels. So what then is meant by the pasuk that says that he wanted to find a divrei chayfetz, but that the Torah's words are straight and said that he cannot? That's that he wanted to judge court cases based on his wisdom. He wanted to use his wisdom to figure out how to paskin without bothering to take testimony and to give warnings and follow all the halachas of a Beis Din. On that it said, no, al pishnayim eidim yakum davar, you have to follow the rule of testimony and all the procedures that go along with it. So that is the Daf Chaf Aleph.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.